Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of TnT Knows It All Sports. You got your host, Thomas Giannis, with his co-host,
Ty
Ty
McGrath,
McGrath.
how you doing?
Good, Ty, good. So we're on episode 4. This is our 4th episode. We're excited. So we have a agenda-packed filled sports talks that we're going to talk about today. So today we're going to talk about the AFC Championship game, the NFC Championship game. We might be short on that. We'll give you more information.
Right.
Uh, NFL head coaching positions and hires, and discussing some NBA talks. That's Ty's favorite topic. So we'll talk about All-Star snubs and just some updates. We have some breaking news too. We'll talk about that during the NBA portion of our show today.
All
All
right.
right, so first, we want to start off. We're going to start off with the NFC. Shouldn't be a long conversation, right? The NFC Championship game,
Hmm.
the 49ers versus the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles won 31-7. Really felt like 51-7,
Yeah.
but that was the final score. And so I'll let you kick it off, Ty, with your breakdown.
All right, thanks. That was just a weird game. I'm not that old, but old enough to watch a lot of football. They were literally playing with, you know, a quarterback that could not throw, and he wasn't a running quarterback. It got down to that. Um, and sadly, of course, it's supposed to be just showing out my feelings for this game, but of course, I can't help but think about the week before that game. San Francisco, not only forget the injuries, they were just really not prepared. Not, I wouldn't say coaching, but I think their emotions got too much of them. They were having really bad penalties, self-inflicted wounds. I mean, dropping snaps, um, unnecessary holdings, like offsides, false start. It was just, hitting people in or out of bounds. It was just a bunch of really sloppy play that never got them in a rhythm. They even had a point where it was 7-7, where you thought, okay, they might have a chance, and then they get a penalty on special teams and um, running into the roughing the kicker, and
Right.
um, then they got a turnover, and it just continued to pile on. So. Um, the Eagles did what they needed to do. I think we talked about it too in our preview that it's strength on strength. Um, making Philly not be able to run the ball and have to pass. Well, there was never any threat from San Francisco's offense after the quarterbacks went out for them to make them have to pass. And so all Philly had to do is run the ball, don't turn the ball over. We're getting the ball in good position, and they were able to, beat them pretty soundly. I will say this: I was actually very impressed with um, the physicality I saw from Philadelphia. They definitely the both offensive and defensive lines showed up big time. Um, they had made a statement, I thought, and playing against a real physical team, and it came out and executed. And so, props to the Eagles. They deserve it. I do think they did get a lot of help from, the football gods, but they make for one half of an interesting Super Bowl. So I'll turn over to you.
All right. Thanks for that, Ty. I would say I didn't really learn anything new from that game, from the previous game, right?
Mhm.
Because the Giants looked like they had a hurt quarterback too. If just what the score was,
Yeah.
and no shade towards the Giants. We haven't learned anything. I mean, so what is interesting to me, I'll just kind of talk about the first, I would say the first 20 minutes. So the first quarter, and then the 5 minutes into the second.
Mhm.
If you actually take away the Devonte Smith catch because it was fourth and two,
Which wasn't even
yeah,
a catch, by the way. Again, this was
right,
mean the football
right.
gods
He
was
was a
held.
signal, but
Yeah.
You know,
And
he
he,
needs a signal
yeah,
to
like I
get to
said,
them.
the football guys was helping them. I mean, I know
Right,
some Eagles fans might not be happy with that, but hey,
right.
it
So
was
if
your
you
favor.
right, so if you actually take that away, it would have been down on that play, right? It would have been
Hmm.
downs on that play. And then it was six straight punts after that. Or actually, I'm sorry, fumble the next drive, which was like a punt because they got it at the 50, 45-yard line of
Hmm.
their of the Eagles, and then it was punts, and then the San Fran scored, and then pretty much the game once Brock Purdy got hurt, which we'll talk about that. I'm going to talk about that play in a second.
Hmm.
Brock Purdy got hurt, and then the game was pretty much over. I forgot Josh Johnson was even in the league. So
Yeah.
when I saw him in there, it was game. It was basically the game was pretty much a wrap.
Yeah.
But if you look at it, if you actually, Greg Olson said this, if during the game, that's what I'm talking about the first 20 minutes. If you actually took the score away and you were watching the game without a score, you would think that it was 21-0. All right. But it was only 7-7 until we got later on and they scored
Hmm.
two more touchdowns. So I would give kudos to Philly. We talked about it last week, right? We talked about running the ball, and the strength of Philadelphia's defense is their edge rushers.
Hmm.
San Fran didn't want to run the ball in the beginning, and they
No.
didn't want to block their edge rushers because
Yeah.
they had a tight end on Riddick, right? I've seen Riddick,
Yeah.
which made no sense. I mean, I get it. They're going to say that's not the reason why he got hurt. But why are you putting a tight end on the edge rusher when you already know that their edge between Sweat and Riddick, they're guys. I've seen Riddick. They're the guys are the ones that like to go on the outside to do like kind of wide nine kind of
Hmm.
approach, and so
Hmm.
they want to get under because they're like quick guys. They want to get under the arm
Yeah.
of the tackle and move around. But if you actually look at that play, guys, I highly suggest going to replay. He bulldozed the tight end and got right to made a quick move and got to the quarterback.
Hmm.
But being said, even Brock Purdy was in the game. I don't know if they would win. I think it would be more of a challenging game. But to your point earlier, I think Philly got bored in the second half, right? So because
Hmm.
there was no quarterback, they had 269 yards, 25 first downs, but they just kind of got bored and it was like, all right, let's run the ball with Bar Scott, right? Like so their backup running back with a touchdown. AJ Brown got a couple. It just was. It didn't tell us anything. And so if Philly can run the ball like they did in that game against the number one run defense in the NFL, then the next week's gonna be challenging, or Super Bowl, I should say, which is the following week, right?
Hmm.
Next it would be actually be it would be a good game. But I learned nothing out of that game, so
No,
I'll
I
leave it
agree.
at that.
No,
So
no, I agree. It was a very disappointing game when with all the things that occurred. It could have been, I think, a pretty good game. San Francisco's definitely kicking themselves. And like George Kittle said, um, yeah, how do you think I feel that I had to play an NFC Championship game without any quarterback? You think I'm gonna feel good about it?
right,
Which is true. I mean, that just stinks for those guys, but
yeah,
oh well. I don't like San
yeah.
Francisco, so and or Philly,
I
so, so hey.
and I would say I was surprised they didn't use Wildcat. They just handed the
Yeah,
like you're handing the ball off everyone knew you're handing the ball off. You
yeah,
didn't even attempt to pass past 3 yards.
yeah,
So they were playing eight in the box. I mean, it's just
yeah.
like
They
that's why
could,
I said I had to learn nothing.
yeah,
Nothing new.
They could have put McCaffrey back there and had Debo with a running back, or
Right.
Mason, and they could have done
Right.
that. I'm like, if you're gonna just run the ball anyway, at least make people honest and have
Right.
it 11 on 11. But
Mm.
whatever. I mean, I can say that, but again, this it's just not
Yep.
that's hard to play
Right.
at that level and win a
Right.
game. So,
Absolutely.
all right.
So we'll move on. Phillies. My dad's a big Phillies fan, so kudos to my pops for the Eagles going to the Super Bowl. All right, so we'll move on to a more interesting game, which was the AFC Championship game with the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Kansas City Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
Final score: KC wins 23-20. What's interesting is this 4 games in a row that the game was determined by 3 points. I just want to throw a stat
Ah,
out there,
that
but
is true.
so I'll let you kick it off, time.
Well, thanks. So, I will admit that during the game I saw like a little bit of first half and then I had my own started doing old man. Well, not really old man. I'm in a basketball league, so try to play. And then I got to see the fourth quarter. So I came back and actually watched it a day or so later. Um, very another very interesting game. I think the story of the game that I saw is very similar. It's not exactly the same as the last game, but it's football all the time. Everyone wants to talk about quarterbacks, they want to talk about wide receivers and running backs, but it's the interior line play. And you watch the Bengals play the Bills the week before, and they manhandled the Bills' offensive line, and the Bills' defensive line didn't get any pressure, and the Bengals were able to run, and that's why they won. This week was completely the opposite. I don't know if we talked about it, but Chris Jones, he had 0 sacks in his playoff
We did.
career. Yep.
We talked about
Well, he
last week.
got two this game. So shouldn't be a big deal. Like, oh, it's only 2 sacks, but that's telling because you were watching the game. Those guys were dominating. Cincinnati struggled to run the ball, um, and the D line for the Bengals were not putting as much pressure on Mahomes as they were the week before on Josh Allen.
Hmm.
And I think that really affected, I would say, more on the Bengals offensive side. Um, the Spags, man, he had a very Spagnuolo is the coach for people that do not know, a defensive coordinator for the Bengals. He really switched up his schemes. He was blitzing, he was fake blitzing, he was doing zones, man, double teaming different people at different times, really keeping them off guard and, causing some mistakes.
Hmm.
And as I watched the game, the Chiefs lost a couple players too. They lost Tony. They lost Juju Smith-Schuster during the game, but I think it didn't really affect them because the way they were attacking Cincinnati, it didn't really matter who was out there, to be honest. They weren't
Hmm.
trying to go deep per se. They were had really good pass route combinations. But what really, really impacted the game, and I think the reason why the Bengals did not win the game was Tyler Boyd being gone. Once he was gone, it was, oh, I mean, if you're since you were Kansas City, and you could see it on certain plays, they're like, we're just double teaming T. Higgins and we're double teaming Chase. You're gonna have to
Hmm.
throw it to whatever Irwin, who doesn't get to play very often. And we're gonna man him up, and then you're also gonna have to throw to Hunter Hurts or
Right.
whatever. And those guys are gonna have to beat us. And they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't. They couldn't get any separation. I mean, if you watch the routes, they were terrible and
Hmm.
forced, Joe Cool to not be so cool. Throw
Right.
balls up because he had to throw them up to his playmakers. Had 2 picks. The second one, wasn't as bad as the first. That first one was, I don't know. He was getting
Right.
pressure, and he's like, "Well, Chase is, I mean, he's like Higgins is there somewhere. I'm just gonna throw it to him," but he wasn't
Hmm.
open. Um,
Right.
so I think that was really really critical. Kansas
Right.
City, man, Mahomes, and everyone's like, "Oh, Mahomes the greatest thing ever." He just really he took what the defense gave him. He's like, "I'm not going with these huge shots." He didn't have to make a whole bunch of plays, but they didn't mind dinking the
Mm.
ball, taking the little plays, getting
Right.
second and fours, short third downs. So then they were easy to be converted, and they did not stop running the ball.
Right.
Regardless, they kept running the ball, which we talked about. Will Andy Reid run the ball? So
Hmm.
I thought those were the keys to the game. Props to the Chiefs for winning. I
Right.
did think the Bengals were going to win. I thought the game we both called the under on that one, which was
Mm.
pretty spot on. I knew Kansas City's defense was going to show up. I knew that they weren't going to score that many points. I think that last drive. It was very telling. Cincinnati had a chance to drive the ball down the field and couldn't do it. So
Right.
yeah. But anyway, go ahead.
No, I have so much to say, but I'm gonna, because I could talk about this game. This was if you're a big football junkie like us,
Hmm.
this is a great game to watch. But before we start, I do want to give my condolences to Eli Apple. So Eli, you were doing a lot of talking, and now you're in Cancun with Stephon Diggs. And you got burnt like 3 times, but we'll talk about that. And then the next thing would be Josh Allen. I know you're at the golf courses right now in
Hmm.
AT&T Pebble Beach, whatever that course is.
Hmm.
I hope you watch this game and watch Patrick Mahomes, who now just proved to everybody. Wouldn't improve anybody. He didn't prove that to me. But I always said that, and I'm a Bills fan. I always said to Patrick Mahomes, this time, that
Hmm.
he's the best quarterback in the NFL. I don't know why even they're talking about Joe Burrow, and then my Bills Homer fans are
Hmm.
talking about he's better than. No, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback, and I hope you watch the game. I
Hmm.
hope you watch the game because Patrick Mahomes, to your point, did exactly what what the defense gave him.
Yep.
Does help that Andy Reid is his offensive coordinator and
Yes.
Eric Bieniemy. By the way,
Yes.
Eric Bieniemy, we'll talk about it in head coaching vacancies,
Hmm.
but played also he's the one that calls plays.
Yep.
So I want to talk about that first before I get into the analytics, right? So
Yep.
in the data overall, the Bengals lost the game. Chiefs didn't win the game. Right.
I
So
agree with
I'll
that.
start off, and here's what I would say. The Chiefs had more injuries. So one injury that Tyler Boyd got hurt, but Snead, their best cornerback, got hurt, which meant that Trent McDuffie had to go to the inside to play the slot, and then Jalen Watson had to go on the outside. And if you actually, and we'll talk about it in a second, so they had to put Trent McDuffie in the slot. And if you watch the game,
Mm.
what Ty's pointing out to is Tyler Boyd was cooking him, okay, before he got hurt. He
He
had two
was.
catches, 40 yards, and he was getting cooked. All right,
Hmm.
especially on a couple of drives. Then he got hurt, and then all went down. Right. So the Bengals last week had a great game plan. Joe Burrow was holding on the ball too long this time. That's why they were getting the pressure. Right. I was confused on why. And during last week, the Bills game, you were dinking, dunking, and
Hmm.
then all of a sudden you're holding on to the ball, waiting for Chase or somebody else to get open. And Kansas City played it smart.
Yep.
Chris Jones put a clinic out there, and
Hmm.
I would think that Zach Taylor would adjust. That okay, wow, we are getting manhandled at the line. We can't run. If you take Joe, you're going to say, well, Thomas, they have 4.2 yards per carry. No, take Joe Burrow's
Yeah.
four rushes for
Right.
30 yards. They average 2.5 yards a
Right.
carry.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
they were trying to keep the defense honest. They even
Hmm.
put Pedron back there because Joe Mixon,
Yeah.
he can't hit a hole, but he can hit people in clubs, but he can't hit a hole. So Joe Mixon couldn't do anything. So they were getting destroyed. But why I'm saying they lost, and I'll talk about Patrick Mahomes because I was screaming on top of my lungs. I think my wife was like, "What are you talking about? Why aren't you going to T Higgins?" He was
Hmm.
getting open, and when they were going to T Higgins at the end of the second quarter, he had 5 straight plays to tell T
Hmm.
Higgins should have got a touchdown. The
Hmm.
man, he was doing well because he had Jalen Watson on there. If I'm T Higgins, I'm like, why aren't you throwing the ball? I got
Yeah.
Jalen Watson, undrafted free agent rookie that's
Yep.
guarding me, right? So they just weren't. It looked like they weren't prepared, which is very, very weird and odd on that side of it. So I would say to lose game on the Chiefs side. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy did a great job of adjusting. Pacheco was getting no yards. He averaged
Hmm.
2.4 yards a carry, but they
Hmm.
ran it. They ran it 20 times for 42 yards.
Right.
But
Right.
they ran it. They said, let's
Yep.
try it. We run it.
Yep.
Even though let's keep the defense honest. Let's run it.
It's
Let's bring the
important.
linebackers up because the
Yep.
linebackers were up there. Let's bring the linebackers up. You're right to like actually make sure that they don't go too safety deep. Uh, but Eli Apple, I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of the guy, but he was getting burned by MSS. I mean, MVS. I'm sorry, MVS. He was getting burned. MVS looked like he was Jamar Chase, on the
Yep.
other side of it.
Yeah, good old Valdez
So,
Scantling.
yeah, I know. And he didn't drop any balls. I mean, I'm surprised that he didn't drop any passes.
Hmm.
So Mahomes was doing well, right, on a bad ankle. But again, Cincinnati. I looked at the defense. Why weren't they containing? I mean, the guy has a hobbled ankle. Why weren't you blitzing more? I really didn't understand what the defense was doing. You know,
Hmm.
Houdini, they call him. Houdini was his
Yeah.
name. Well, where was all the blitzes? Where was the? I know they try to do the slot blitz with Michael Hilton, but
Hmm.
it just seemed they weren't doing anything. All right,
Yeah.
they did a good job of maintaining Kelsey for a little bit,
Yep.
but your number two, no, number one technically, Juju. Your number two before he got hurt, Hartman. Hartman was your number two, and Sky Moore's out there, and the receiver Watson. I don't even know he even plays sometimes. We're out there,
Yeah.
and you're not blitzing. I was just very confused on their game plan. But kudos to the Chiefs. The rest might have helped them out a little bit, but that's besides the
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, they did.
But kudos to the Chiefs for winning that game. Patrick Mahomes can say, "Wow, I finally had a 300 yard game against KC because he hasn't had one." I'm sorry,
Yeah.
against the Bengals.
Yeah.
Yeah, so against the Bengals, right? And then Joe Burrow, who's been cooking KC, looked very pedestrian.
Yeah.
So yeah, and in 41. So I just again feel that KC didn't win that game. The Bengals gave that game away. I know a
Yeah.
lot of people, and I don't. I'm not, guys. KC fans, you got lucky. Okay, just take it. Don't go
Yeah.
trolling people because
Yeah.
they said that you guys, barely lost the. I'm sorry, you guys deserve to win the game. Everyone's been hating on us, all that. Please, you got
Yeah.
lucky. You won the game. The Bengals decided to bring an F
Yep.
game, just like
Yep.
the Bills gave an F game last week.
Hey.
People can bring their F games in.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, hey, and I have to give you credit. You were correct on both of your picks. I think, I always make my picks based on if everybody, is playing their A game, who do I think is better. Clearly, the San Francisco game, forget that one. I mean, what can you
right.
do on that? But even the Bengals game, I think to your point, even with their B game, they had a chance to win, but you gotta they gotta play better. I mean, they
Mm,
they they did not play well enough. They
right.
had opportunities to make plays and they couldn't make plays. So, anyways, we will talk about the Super Bowl, the Chiefs versus the Eagles next week.
Yeah,
So,
next week we'll talk. That's going to be an interesting game. I can't wait to dive into that
yeah,
and talk more in detail.
yep.
Now we'll go. Now we'll continue with the head coaching jobs. This time of year. This is the time of year that a lot of rumors, a lot of Adam Schefter's Twitter account or text messages go off. He's
Hmm.
always giving you breaking news, right? So it's interesting. So I'll let you start on. There's two actually. Before we start, there's two head coaching jobs that were actually fulfilled, right? So that was a Texan job, D'Amico Ryan,
Hmm.
defensive coordinator for the 49ers, 6-year deal. I'm glad he was able to get his bag. And Sean Payton, which is interesting, hire by the Denver Broncos.
Yeah. So, and there was also the other one that was before that we didn't talk about, which was Frank
All right, I
Reich.
don't want to talk about it, but yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I purpose I missed that, but go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah, I
we're
know.
talking about Frank Wright.
So yeah, I mean, quickly on Frank Reich, I like Frank Reich a lot as a coach. Thought he got a raw deal in Indianapolis. I mean, getting fired. I think the GM should be fired personally. I mean, you got to make your
Chris
team.
Ballard.
Yeah, yeah. I think he's got talent. He's good at picking up defensive players. He's struggled. You got to get a quarterback. I mean, you can't keep getting guys in their 18th year and think that that's going to be the answer, right?
Right.
Especially in a team. I mean, in a league where you could see in the NFC and AFC championship games, you had the youngest quarterbacks. It's a young man's game. You got to adapt. But Steve Wilkes, I thought did a great job and probably deserves a shot at that. Um, but I mean, I'm not going to knock any team for wanting to. They wanted an offensive-minded coach because their defense is really good. So it's fine. So let's get to Sean Payton. Uh, he had a lot of opportunities. Denver. That I call this like you really betting on yourself. Like, he's like, I'm nice as a coach. You know, like I
Right.
can get one of the worst offenses, that I've seen in years. I mean, they were terrible, terrible. Losing games 11-9 or winning games 11-9. It was just, I was like, is this baseball or is this football? Like, I'm confused.
Right.
What's going on? Um, he's banking on the fact that he can get Russell Wilson, who I actually don't think is done as much as some other people think. Get him to play his potential and utilize the talent. So um, it's interesting. I guess if you're Denver, it's a good hire. But they gave up a lot. They gave up a first round pick, and a second round pick in 2024 to get this. So they have no draft capital. They had given up two first round picks for Russell Wilson the year before. So it's like they better hope that Sean Payton is worth players because that's kind of what you're thinking. The coach is worth talent. Like that's,
Right.
that you're banking on your coach to overcome the fact that you can't replenish talent. So hopefully that works. Now, D'Amico Ryans, um, he definitely deserved to be a head coach. Um, but I'm just gonna be flat out, you know, because we're on here, not politically, I'm not no media person. The Houston Texans are a freaking joke of a franchise. And I've been
Hmm.
saying this for a while. And people, my friends, some of us, we have these discussions about, African American head coaches and, you know, how the league has a problem. Well, yeah, they have a problem there. But it's not just African American head coaches. It's not even just the owners, it's organizations that are poorly run by people that do not understand diversity and a different way of thinking, right?
Hmm.
So the Texans, they're like, hey, we're gonna hire Cully for a year, and then we're gonna hire, Lovey Smith
Love it.
for a year, and now they're saying they're gonna give they clearly are put their money where their mouth is. They cost themselves a lot. They had to sign for a 6-year deal so that he could come because he's probably sitting there like, you guys are a joke. So even if you decide,
Guaranteed
yeah,
all
guaranteed,
money.
right? It's like you're gonna pay me for 6 years for your terrible mismanagement for the last four. Um,
Right.
and I, I would say I'm happy for him, but I'm worried because even though he might be a good coach, when you have terrible leadership, see the Washington Commanders, like they've been years and years. Like um, I think they have good coaches there, but when you just have terrible leadership from an owner to a general manager who got a job because he knows somebody that knew Bill Belichick or something like that, like you're gonna struggle. So I wish D'Amico Ryan's the best. I'm happy that he got a job. I wish he would have not gone to Houston. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just kind of my thing with those picks. Now we have a couple. There's still any vacant. There's still some vacancies,
Yeah.
right?
The Cardinals,
Yep.
but rumor has Brian Flores is leading candidate. And then I'll talk about it. The Colts,
Oh yeah.
Indianapolis Colts, right? But it's good insight. I won't talk necessarily about Carolina. You covered it. I like Frank Wright. I think
Mhm.
Steve Wilkes should have got a job, but it's basically it's whatever they do. They haven't had a here's a stat. They haven't had since their franchise is open. They haven't had an offensive minded coach, a coordinator,
Mm,
offensive
that's true.
coordinator. So
That is
so it's
true.
all been it's been all defensive
Yep.
players.
Yep.
And Frank Wright was their quarterback when
First
they first
quarterback.
started.
Yep.
Yep. So
Yep.
so that there's a connection there. Sean Payton, uh, oof, I don't, I don't, I was never a Russell fan. Russell Wilson, never was a fan. Everyone knows that. He plays well in the system. I'll give him kudos.
Mm,
Future Hall of Famer. Apparently they knew what I knew,
mm.
and they got traded and they robbed him. By the way, not only first round picks, Noah Fant,
Yeah.
Shelby Smith, whatever the DN name, and
Hmm.
two first rounders, two second rounders, and they gave up, I think, a third rounder.
Yep. And Drew
See,
Lock, by the way. But
well,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, is he
throw
on the
away.
team still? Okay, Drew,
Yeah. He's
Drew Lock. But again, if you look at Sean, if which I'm still surprised that he still has a job, but the coach, I don't even want to say his name because I don't know why he has a job
mm.
for the LA Chargers. If
Oh.
Staley,
Oh yeah,
Brandon
Brandon
Staley,
Staley. Oh
if he would have been fired, I think Sean would have went there.
yeah.
Uh, So he's like, let me get a team. And you got to think about, as a person like Sean, does he have? He wants to be like the GOAT. So he's like, if I can turn this franchise around,
Hmm.
literally was terrible, and
Hmm.
make them somewhat and win a Super Bowl, then he's up there in consideration as the best coach, probably ever. That's what he's
Yep.
thinking.
Yep.
So good luck, Sean. You guys have a lot. The offense is good. The defense, they got some players, but good luck. You have no assets, and hopefully your caps is a little strapped. So let's see what happens. But he does have the Walton family. They own Walmart. Maybe they're open up their book, make a lot of, in NFL. Jerry Jones, this Cowboy fan, they know how to manipulate a salary cap, making
Yep.
guarantee money. So let's see
Hmm.
what they do. Uh, D'Amico, it's interesting about D'Amico. He could have been a head coach last year. He said no to jobs. Then he
Hmm.
waited for the Texans job that nobody wanted for 2 years. And the reason why nobody wanted, because you had an upset quarterback that they want to play for them, and then he also had his legal issues. So that he was going to play.
Rub it in.
Uh, huh?
I said rub it in. No, just joking.
Yeah, yeah. So he had his issues. Then he didn't want to play with him. Then they traded him, right? So they had no quarterback yet. They had draft picks, but they had no quarterback, right? So nobody wanted jobs. So it was this fall man, of course, right? So it's
Hmm.
fall man. But D'Amico's looking like, okay, we have the number 2 pick. I'm not a fan of the quarterbacks in his draft, but we'll talk
Hmm.
about that in later episodes. But he's a defensive guy. There's some great defensive players. He has a number 12 pick, get a wide
Hmm.
receiver. But you have a lot of draft capital, and then their salary cap is they got some salary cap. They're gonna
Yep.
move. They're gonna move Cooks. Brandon Cooks is not gonna be there. I mean, I doubt it.
Yeah.
So they have some salary cap they're gonna move, and they got some good young defensive pieces. So
Yep.
maybe he's working together. But I agree, their ownership is a joke. So
Yeah.
good. I would love to hear some of the information that's going to be given away in the near future, right? Of
Yeah.
like what that negotiate happened. He probably said, you know what, I'm going to get pick my staff. I'm going to pick
Yeah.
whatever I want. Has to be something in the contract. But I will go to now the Colts, because I do want to spend some time on it. You talk about terrible organization. Jim Irsay is a terrible owner. First
Yeah.
off, is he sober when he speaks? I don't know. So
Yeah.
whenever that guy's talking, I don't know if he's on what drug he's on, or what he's
Hmm.
because he doesn't seem like he's coordinated of like what's going on, right?
Hmm.
But to his defense, Frank Wright also and Chris Battlebry had talked and brought those old quarterbacks too. So I'm not gonna
Yeah.
let Frank off the hook, right? But they
Yeah.
gave some money up. They gave up some money. But if Jeff Saturday is a head coach with no experience, he hasn't even coached, folks. Jeff Saturday, for everyone who might not know who he was a center for the Indiana Colts when Peyton Manning was there, and was on ESPN. He's doing what we're doing, but at a higher level.
Hmm.
Never coached He coached high school for 1 year. Never coached in college, and never coached at all anything in the NFL. Let alone was in the personnel department scouting nothing in both college and NFL. It was hired in the middle of the year. Okay, maybe I thought they were tanking it on purpose,
Yeah.
so they can get the first pick because they want a quarterback.
Hmm.
But now I'm hearing they're in a serious negotiations of him being head coach, and rumor has, I've read from the New York Post, that the organization within is like, no, he can't be the coach. So A, if this is true, it's a laughing stock. And then B, now what coach is going to want to go there if your owner is really considering to get a head coach? Indianapolis is stuck between a rock and a hard place,
Hmm.
because they have the personnel. I really truly
Yeah.
feel they actually have a decent quarterback that's named not Matt Ryan, Philip Rivers, or Carson Wentz. Anybody that's actually decent, maybe Jacoby Brissett. There's somebody that kind of a bridge quarterback when they
Hmm.
draft somebody, because they are going to draft somebody number 4. Let's be honest, they're going to get a pick of the 3 quarterbacks. So they get somebody that can develop them. The Colts got the running game, offensive line. They got a good defense. They had a
Yeah.
lot of hurt players last year. I mean,
Yeah.
I think they had the highest IR group in the
Yeah.
NFL. I mean,
Yeah.
they literally had half the team in IR. It felt.
Yeah.
So I think they have a chance, but who wants to be there with Jim Irsay? He's a joke of an owner.
Yeah. Yes.
Now the Cardinals, another owner, Cliff Kingsbury should never been hired. If I'm a black coach, do I really want to go there? I know Flores is going to go there. Do I really want to go there after what happened previously to Steve Wilkes? Right? They literally set him
Yeah.
a failure. Josh Rosen, who wanted to be on Wall Street, not a quarterback, got drafted next year, and then you draft Kyler Murray, which didn't pan out. So we'll see what happens with the Arizona Cardinals. But I personally would not want to be there.
Yeah,
Salary cap issues. They
yeah.
don't got a GM. Well, and their owner is like one of those guys that wants to take control. I don't know if you didn't watch it, but the Hard Knocks I was watching midseason.
Mm,
It wasn't a fan of the owner. You could see D Hop wasn't a fan of the culture. Just it seemed like it was very disorganized and dysfunctional.
mm.
So of course they're gonna hire a black man to take it over, right? That's what they're gonna do.
Yeah,
But
get him
we'll
set up.
yeah, shut up. But
Yeah,
we'll see.
right.
But we'll see more to come.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with those jobs, and we'll talk about it in the future in our future shows.
Yeah, really quick
Now, yeah,
before
go
we
ahead.
convert over there, really quick, sidebar, not head coaching, but it is head coaching related.
Yeah,
Cowboys, head coach Mike McCarthy, he he's on the hot seat. You know, you saw my
okay,
Cowboys take. He's on the hot seat and he's let Kellen Moore go, just for everybody that does not know. And Kellen Moore is now the offensive coordinator for the Chargers. And so
got
Mike McCarthy is now going to be calling plays. This your chance, buddy. That's what I'm saying. It's
it.
on record. You better figure something out because
Yeah,
I won't want to blame Kellen Moore, but it wasn't necessarily his fault. He can't throw the ball.
right.
He's not the
Sure.
quarterback. So watch Kellen Moore go over to San Diego and they start lighting it up. But anyway, just want to throw that in there. And that's another one next year we might be talking about
Yeah,
coaches that are gone. So
yeah. There are gonna be a few. You're right.
yep.
But now we'll move on and we'll end the show and discuss some highlights in NBA. Before we get into that, we're going to talk about All Star snubs,
Oof.
and it must be a boring week in the media. Kyrie is back in the media. Apparently, Kyrie Irving, who's a point guard for the New Jersey Nets, or sorry, Brooklyn Nets. They act like they're New Jersey because the organization is functional like they were in New Jersey, but the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
He's requesting a trade. It's interesting that he's asking for a week before the trade deadline. Well, actually, not a week before, but close to the trade deadline. So
Yeah.
I'll let you start off with some of your NBA snubs, NBA All Star snubs, maybe one or two, and
Well,
your some
y-
whatever your thoughts on Kyrie.
yeah. So, well, just for anyone that doesn't know who are on the All-Star team, I was trying to pull it up.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, okay.
but that's all right. I can just name them off. So for the Eastern Conference, the starters are Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kyrie Irving, actually, is a starter. These are voted for by the fans.
Yeah.
Uh, Donovan Mitchell, Kevin Durant, and Jason Tatum are the starters. The reserves for the East that were named yesterday are Jaylen Brown from Boston, Joel Embiid, who should be a starter, and I talked about it last week. It's a joke. Um, DeMar DeRozan, Julius Randle from my Knicks, Drew Holiday, Tyrese Halliburton, and Bam Adebayo. So, um, I will, and then I'll go over the West now, and then I'll talk about these snubs. So for West, the starters are LeBron James, who's been incredible this year, Nikola Jokic, um, Steph Curry, Stephen Curry, to be correct, Luka Doncic, and Zion Williamson, who's played like one game this season, but has been amazing in that one game.
Yeah.
Um, and then the reserves for the West is my boy, I think Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who talked about last week, Dame Lillard, Damian Lillard, Paul George, Lauri Markkanen, which again, as you remember from my NBA preview, I
Mm.
said he was going to be an All-Star, and he was. Domantas Sabonis, who also I said was going to be All-Star, and he was. And then Ja Morant, who is Ja Morant. I mean, I think should have been a starter. And then Jaren Jackson Jr., which was a surprise to me, and I think they were rewarding defense. He's had a good year. I play fantasy basketball, and he's also on my team, so I know what he's been doing.
Especially
So
on blocks. Defensively,
yes,
he's very good.
he's been incredible when it comes to that. So snubs. All right. So here's a couple things. So we'll get to the East. Um, I'm gonna sound like a homer, but I'm not. uh, Drew Holiday shouldn't have been an all-star. Now, I love Drew Holiday. Actually, I've been saying this for years. My two favorite, most underrated players in a point guard position in the last 10 to 10 years are Drew Holiday and Mike Conley. Anyone that knows me, those two guys are like two of
Yeah.
my favorite
I'll, yeah,
players. I love those guys
I'll sign off on that.
because
I'll co-sign on that.
you can ask all the greats, Steph and Dame and Westbrook and all those guys when they got to play those two. It's always tough when they were in their prime. Those guys are gonna compete with you. You're not gonna, just outshine them. They know how to play defense. They play smart, etc. So I like Drew Holiday. But this year, Jalen Brunson should be an all-star. All
Yeah.
across the board. I mean, he's averaging almost 23 points a game, his assists, and he's clearly the reason why the Knicks are the way they are, where they are right now. Um, I think it's a joke, but I guess they didn't want to put two Knicks on there because Julius Randle deserved it. Um, the other person that I have an issue with is not making this two of them. Um, Anthony Edwards for Minnesota. So we
Yeah.
talked about Minnesota not having Karl Anthony Towns. Anthony Edwards has carried them. They've had a pretty good record, and he didn't make it. Now it's tough. Who do you take out? You're not taking out Shea. You're not taking out Dame. You're not taking out Ja. Got it. Paul George. Uh, has he played enough games to me to be an all-star this year? I personally don't think so. Um, but maybe you can make an argument there. The other guard or the other person that didn't make it was De'Aaron Fox. I
Yeah.
thought that he deserved it. They're number 3 seed um, in the West, but again, it's hard. It's always going to be snubs. I'm not stomping my foot with at those two Western All Stars as I am with Jalen Brunson. That is a travesty. Um,
Hmm.
the other person, from a forward perspective from the West, is Aaron Gordon. You got the number 1 team in the basically I'm in the league. They're half a game behind Boston, I think, for the best record in the league. Number 1 in the West. Aaron Gordon should have been All-Star. They talked about it a little bit on Inside the NBA. Totally agree with them. I mean, Jokic is great, but he's passing to someone. Someone is scoring, and it's him. He's he's been the second leading scorer consistently all year. Jamal Murray is now coming on board, which is why they're really tough. But Aaron Gordon should have been on there. Jaren Jackson, eh, I like him, but not over Aaron Gordon personally. So that's my feeling on these on the All-Star snubs. And I'll let you get into that, and then maybe we can both tag team on this Kyrie thing because I got plenty to say.
Yeah, so I'll add a little bit, and then because I got plenty to say for Kyrie, but I add a little bit. I agree with Jalen. Jalen was a snub because the Knicks, the games I watch, the Knicks without him, I don't know what they might be. They might be Detroit Pistons, but
Hmm.
because they need point guard play. But Pascal, right? Pascal
Siakam.
for Siakam
Hmm.
for Toronto, he's the first player ever to miss the All Star to average over 20 points, 25 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. Never been.
Hmm.
But Toronto's not doing well, and I get the
Hmm.
forwards were a little they were stacked in the East this year. So it is what it is. That's the only I would say the only one. And then
Hmm.
yeah, like how are you not getting Fox on there, De'Aaron Fox, when
Yeah.
Sacramento hasn't been good since Chris Webber?
Yeah.
Okay,
No.
and so I mean
Yeah.
2000 and what 5 between 2000 yeah 2005 was the last time they were in the playoffs. 2006
Hmm.
they haven't
Hmm.
been good at all, and they're relevant now because of him.
Yep.
I just and I understand West is basically the West is like the AFC for quarterbacks. I understand when it comes to point guards, guards
Yeah.
actually I should say. Overall, the West is guard you over there.
Yes, it is.
That then it's hard to find a spot, but if you're third place for the Kings, with
Yeah.
Mike Brown coaching, good job with Mike Brown. But
Yeah.
the Kings, you should get a spot. But those are the ones. I mean, you pretty much hit it on the head on most of the snubs. It's going to be interesting. But the NBA All Star Game is way better than Pro Bowl. I mean, are they going to be throwing water balloons at this All Star game?
Yeah.
No, they're probably not. But so excited for that. But Kyrie, let me just start off with Kyrie, and I'll let you chime in. You probably have a lot more to say.
Hmm.
Kyrie is, and Stephen A. always says that, is a basketball talent that you haven't seen, especially at the point guard position, in a while. And we're talking about
Hmm.
talent, player, good talent, but former #1 pick in the draft.
Yep.
Um, Duke is going to claim him. We played 4 games there. Let's be honest, but he played for Duke in college, but
Right.
he was hurt and
Right.
kept him out. But he was #1 pick. Kyrie is, he played for Boston, he played of course, for the Cleveland Cavaliers for
Hmm.
the beginning of his career.
Hmm.
So he's a talent, but it just seems like he can never get along with anybody. Everywhere he goes, people just don't like him.
Yeah.
I don't know if and he's just a weird guy. It's a
Hmm.
weird guy,
Hmm.
and this is where, and I'll let you after I just say this, but this is where it just gets interesting in basketball because we don't know a lot is going on. Kevin Durant's not a true leader, and LeBron was probably professionally slapping Kyrie around, like shut up, just be
Yeah.
quiet, do all that stuff. Leader, you got Ben Simmons and you got KD and Kyrie. I mean, that is a real world cast right there. You remember the Real World show, like that cast?
Yep.
That is the cast of all the personalities, all the dramas going on. TMZ Sport will love to be in that locker
Yeah.
room. So I just have a feeling that they can't get along, and Kyrie just who he is, and probably wants to leave. I made a joke earlier. Somebody probably ate pork in front of him, and was like, "Y'all disrespecting me. I gotta go." So who knows with that guy? You
Yeah.
don't know with him. It's a joke, but he's kind of a head case. Well, not kind. He's a head case. And does a talent outweigh the immaturity that he has? And people are going to say, "Well, he's not immature." To me, he is.
Oh, yeah.
But
Please.
I'll let you. People are going to defend
Yeah.
him. But go ahead.
Yeah. Again, I'm all for talent, but in team sports, it's about, who can work together for the common goal, to win. This guy, he just he's a different cat, which is fine. Um, but I personally believe he is delusional. Like, he believes in his own head he's one way when in reality he's not. Like, remember he's like, yeah, we lost. We as a management team are gonna go evaluate, what we need to do to get better in an off season. Who told you you're a GM? You're
I
part of the
remember.
problem, right? I'm like,
Well,
what are you doing? So in his
yeah.
mind, oh, I'm a leader and I'm one of the guys. No, you might be one of the best players, but you dang sure aren't a leader, and they can't rely on you. And so, yes, I've heard people say, oh, the media has, been the reason why Kyrie is in the forefront. No, it's Kyrie that's in reason why he's in the forefront. He's always doing something. It's his choice. He can choose to not be, an issue. But he does, and he doesn't, and there's nothing wrong with this, right? Everyone is allowed to do whatever they want, but you're a professional basketball player. It's not your life, it doesn't define who you are, but you also can't be upset when people are like, yo, we're not going to um keep you because we don't trust that you want to play basketball. You're like, you know what? I want to go to my sister's birthday during the middle of the season, so I'm gonna miss a week or two. Well, other professions have, vacations too. Yeah, but they're also not making, 30, 80, $80 million, and you guys got an off season. Like, what are you doing? You can miss a game, but a week? Like, what are we doing? What are you doing? Kyrie,
Right.
in his mind, that's fine, right?
Hmm.
And so now in his mind, he was like, okay, I want to sign an extension. And this offseason, he was like, I want to sign an extension, or we're gonna do a trade. Nobody wanted to trade for him. Wonder why. So he's like, you know what? Fine. Forget the trade. I'm going to come in. I'm going to show everybody that I'm willing to work and I'll be able to, contribute to the team, which he has for 3 months. He thinks
Right.
3 months is worth the other 3 years where he's been inconsistently playing because of whatever reason. I don't want to get vaccinated. Everybody else wants to get vaccinated. I don't want to do this. And hey, that's your decision. But also you get the repercussions of that decision. So now
Right.
he's like, I want to get traded because they won't extend me. Well, of course they won't extend you. You showed 2.5 months that you could actually be here and do something. You think 2.5 months is worth them investing 4 years in you? Because what's going to
Right.
happen? What happened just today is why they
Right.
don't trust you.
Yeah.
He just all of a sudden be like, I don't feel like
Right.
playing right now.
Guaranteed money too. You remember NBA is guaranteed money.
Guaranteed. I'm not picking him up. And he is talented, but he needs to go, unfortunately sad, because he's still got so much talent. He either needs to go to Oblivion, which is like Utah, and nobody ever talks about people in Utah. Just go there
Right.
and play basketball and nobody cares, which he doesn't want to do. Or he needs to go play for LeBron because LeBron's got enough clout, which will get him to, be able to fall in line.
But
But
that's LA though. Media, oof, that, I don't know,
New York, it's the
man.
same. There's no difference in New York and LA. It's the same.
Yeah, that's true, and that's his people too, vegans and all that. He may. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't know. Maybe he get
that's
along
true.
with them. So.
But hey, more power to him. I mean, he's an all-star, but I'll say this as Knicks fans, we dodged a bullet because there was a point it would have been Kate. I wanted KD. But then they're like, well, Kyrie and KD. And I was like, I actually don't want Kyrie. And people, oh, what's wrong? You don't want Kyrie? No, I don't want Kyrie. Because how is that Nets? The Knicks have been terrible or they're not been that great, but at least we're kind of here level. We're not great or low. The Nets are like hostage. You actually have talent, but you have no draft picks anymore, no cap space, and you're not winning
Hmm.
because
Oh
those
yeah,
guys have held you hostage for 4 years. So
right.
if I'm them, I'm trading him or he's going to be, gone for nothing. So, but anyway, more on the NBA, I'm sure later as we go. Really quick, we forgot to mention James Harden not making the All-Star team. I think that's also game.
I'm a Rockets fan,
I know
so
you're not going to
can't
mention
use it. I can't talk about him.
it,
Yeah,
but
I was gonna say him, but yeah.
11 assists a game. I mean, 20 some point. It's there's second or whatever in the East. There's a lot of Trey Young didn't make it. There's a lot of people that should have made it over Drew Holiday. That's all I'm saying. And I like Drew Holiday. And I thought he could have been all-star for the first 10 games, but they played 50. So
Right.
the last 40, no. So anyways,
Yeah, yeah,
we'll
yeah,
see.
true.
You know?
We'll see. Yep, and they're gonna be trades next week. We'll probably talk about a bunch of trades getting
Yeah.
active. So we're excited. And we'll hopefully we'll see some blockbuster trades. I always want to see a blockbuster trade.
Yeah.
I just my last point is Kyrie. His stats, 27 point. He's having one of his best years of
Yeah.
actually for a while. But also durability is another thing too. Like he gets hurt. I don't know if he just kind of fakes injury because he's just
Mhm.
bored and doesn't want to play. I don't know, but you're right about being that case. But if I'm the Nets, to your point, the last point I'll say about Kyrie, then if I'm the Nets, I would just trade him, and I'll trade Ben Simmons. Honestly, they probably need to trade everybody. It'll be
Yeah.
better for the Rockets because we have their draft pick. So I would love to pull a Danny Ainge move like he did and got
Yeah.
Jalen Brown, all those picks. So
Yeah.
I love the Nets. I love the Nets dysfunction just as a Rockets fan, because we got a lot of their draft picks the next 3 years, four
Mm,
years actually. So
mm.
please continue with all the drama. We'll call them the real world Brooklyn Nets.
Yes.
Yeah.
When people start, being fake and start getting real. That's
Right,
that's
right, right. All right, guys. Well, before we end, we want to make sure that you guys subscribe
hmm
to TnT Knows It All Sports. Anything you disagree with us or anything that you actually that you like or any subjects you want to talk about, please leave it in the comment. Until then, have a great weekend and we'll talk to you guys next week.
All right, later, fellas and
Take,
ladies. Bye.
all right, take care.